Ascend family and the guests, welcome to Ascend Together Forum. Leading and healing together, transformative power of collective action. My name is Mosin. It is my greatest honor to be able to open today's session for everyone. I'm currently working for Mercedes-Benz USA, and I am an enthusiast in mental health and dedicated my whole career in my life to talk about it, to express awareness. And today I am delighted to be here with you and together with an amazing list of guests and speakers. And we will guide you through a powerful collective healing experience, one that draws the essence from every one journey we share here through the transformative power of sharing and supporting. The theme of Ascend in 2024 is leading together. The mission of Ascend to support and develop business leaders in the Asian and Pacific Island descent has always been predicted on the foundation of togetherness, the sense of belonging, inclusion, empowerment, and overall well-being of us, from us. We, as members of Asian and Pacific Islander community, embody cultures that are rich in creation, in generosity and nurturing. This is not just part of our heritage. It is, and it has always been, a vibrant and a living practice that is influencing the world every single day, throughout history, across the globe. And today, it is undeniable that our collective effort is providing the world with immense amount of value. But we also realized that in order for us to continue to contribute to the society the best possible way, in order for us to continue to show love and care to the people that we care around us, in order for us to continue to take care of others, we have to take care of ourselves first and foremost. Ascend has launched a 3-part report series exploring API mental health at workplaces. This release, titled API Mental Health at Work, examines unique stressors, including the surge of anti-Asian sentiment post-COVID-19, alongside broader issues like gender equality and work-life balance. It offers insights on how to foster employee well-being at work. If you go to the chat, our Ascend team has posted the link of the report there. Please make sure you grab the link and share with your colleagues and with your employers. Remember, we can only move the needle if we take actions collectively together. Like I said in the very beginning, it is my greatest honor to be here today. So let's start with why. And why are we here? Why am I here? Just over 2 years ago, I was at a crucial crossroads of my life. Professionally, I was at the peak of my career, spearheading marketing strategies, taking a unicorn startup from 100 million valuation to an astonishing 1 billion. The task at the time seemed like a mission impossible. It seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime. It seemed like that by achieving it is an ultimate testament to my own worth. But how wrong I was. Obviously, standing here today is not because that I have accomplished some astonishing achievements. No, quite opposite. I am standing here today is because I have failed. I have failed to take care of the most valuable and important asset in my life, that is myself. I am here is not because the brand I represent. It's not because the title I hold. I am here is because my voice was heard by you. I am standing here is not because that my story is somehow worth sharing. I am here today is because everyone's story holds value. Everyone's voice will be heard here at Ascend. I am still very much on a journey of healing, and I want to be here. I want to be here for the strength that we are going to draw from each other. It's the collective us that gives us light, that makes us stronger. I know why we are here. We are here because we are brave. We are willing to embrace our own vulnerabilities, understanding its profound strength. Today, we come together here to create a safe and a supportive environment, an environment that our speakers and our guests can share, can connect, and embark on a path of collective healing. We are here because of you, because of us, united in our purpose on our own journey together. It is my honor to open today's session. With us today are experts and practitioners from all walks of life who will share their experience and stories that demonstrate how we can take action for personal and collective growth. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Shenita Liu. She is a transformative coach and a mystic who is committed to helping people live victorious life. She is the author of an award-winning self-help memoir, Dear Durga, A Mom's Guide to Active Courage and Emerge Victorious. Shenita is here with us today to share a tried and tested self-care tips for activating courage and to uplift us through her spoken word talents. Welcome, Shenita. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be in community with each and every one of you today. This is so powerful. So I was just wondering if you feel comfortable. What if we were to just take a mindful moment to pause and just take a few nice deep breaths? If you're with me, all you have to do is feel free to close your eyes, lower your gaze, or whatever feels comfortable for you. And I'm going to go ahead and take a few nice deep breaths. So go for it. And if you need to take a few more deep breaths, feel free to. So, what we just did speaks to the title of this program. We're leading and healing. And the word lead has many definitions, but essentially, one of the definitions is an example for others to follow. And then healing, all it really means is to make healthy again. And so that's what we're doing, both on an individual and collective level. And so what we just did was so powerful. It didn't take a lot of time and it was free 99. And so I share that because taking care of our mental health is not that hard, but based on the report that was shared, it's unfortunate that it is still hard and there's still a lot of stigma. I mean, we live now where we see social media memes all day long telling us take your deep breaths and take care of yourself, but often it's still really hard and there's still taboo and there's still stigma and there's just layers of stuff that kind of go underneath it that make it difficult. And so I believe one of those layers that contribute to why it's so hard is fear. Fear of, well, let's just put it this way. Fear shows up in all kinds of ways. And sometimes we don't even realize it because it's like so super sneaky. So, for example, I know for myself, fear shows up as self doubt. It shows up as analysis paralysis. It shows up as worry. It shows up as anxiety. It shows up as procrastination. And if anybody's with me here, if you resonate with any or all of that, feel free to like give a head nod or a thumbs up, because the fear is so real and it's showing up all the time in our personal and professional lives. And so fear, to me, I believe that that's an energy that's vibrating down here. And I believe that the antidote to fear is courage, which also I believe vibrates a lot higher up here. And why am I doing this little vibrate thing? Is because I believe that we're all energy. In fact, quick story, when I started my company, Coach Shenita Inc., 9 years ago, I called myself a chief executive officer because that's what they ask you to, like, what's the title of your organization when you fill out like any business or tax forms. And so I used to write that, chief executive officer. And I was like, wait a minute, I might be holding an executive function, but at the end of the day, this is all about my energy, right? If I don't have the energy to facilitate workshops for groups, or to hold community spaces, or to speak in front of hundreds of people, or to walk into my child's classroom and do a workshop about courage, if I don't have energy to do that, I am no good. I cannot serve anyone. I cannot help anyone heal. And so I crossed out the executive and I started calling myself Chief Energy Officer. And I believe that all of you are Chief Energy Officers in your own personal and professional lives, because you're running things and you already have courage. But our energy is something that we have to constantly manage. And I believe that courage is an energy that we have inside of us. It's a multi-dimensional energy, and I believe it resides in two places in our body. Courage comes from the heart. The word core comes from Latin, which is a derivative of the word, and that comes from the heart space. And then there's also the solar plexus. For any of you who know about energy healing and chakras, the solar plexus, which is right beneath, is so powerful because it's all about your willpower and your confidence and your courage. And so I wanted to share, call it my courage, to share a rap song that encapsulates all the things that I believe courage to be. And I believe the Ascend team is going to put it up on a slide so that if you are visual, you could follow along. But I want to go ahead, and I'm going to take a nice deep breath. So let me go ahead and do that. And I'm going to share with you what courage means to me. Courage is a feeling, revealing healing. It starts in your body and goes beyond the ceiling. Wisdom, a spiritual system, one of a kind, made for humankind. Courage is a mindset that you won't forget. Pure alignment, pure refinement. It's a behavior, could be your savior, protecting you from all the stranger danger. Courage is a practice when fears distract us. An unflawed squad, God or no God, an attitude of magnitude renewed by gratitude. You get your VIP access in solitude. Courage is a lifestyle, so fertile, worthwhile, strength on speed dial. It is mystic, altruistic, alchemistic, and realistic. Courage is your song, reminding you belong. Hey DJ, keep playing my song all night, on and on and on. Courage is an energy and a liberty, a dance, a prance, or a stance, look a pretty or a no-frill skill, driven by your will to fulfill. Dang, what a thrill. Courage is love, 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 love. The kind of love that you'll never get sick of. It's a bear hug squeeze, cozy full of ease. It don't charge fees. Can I get another round, please? So thank you so much for listening to my courage rap. And the reason why I was sharing that is because that is one of the ways that I tell my story. And I believe we all have stories to tell. And the reason why I bring up the story is because growing up, I didn't have a lot of courage. I was living in all kinds of fear. And so thank you so much for the love. I see some emojis, some well wishes in the chat. So thank you. I really received that. And so where was I? So I'm growing up, little scaredy cat. And later on in my life, I connect with someone named Durga. Who's Durga? She's this warrior goddess. She rides a tiger. She holds all these weapons. This is actually a little like, oh, you might not be able to see her with the zoom graphics, but she don't play around. She's this Hindu warrior goddess, and she shows up as my courage metaphor one day, and she's like, hey, by the way, you need to leave the toxic job. You need to start your own practice. You need to be you. And I didn't really have the courage to do all of that. And so it took me many, many years, especially with my life coaching and mental health work, to be able to activate my courage, but not just activate it, but to keep it alive. And so fast forward years later, it's the pandemic, it's 2021. I just had my third kid. I'm like lost in my identity crisis. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing with my life, with my business? And let's just say my energy was not vibing too high. And at the end of 2021, Dorka shows up and she's like, you're going to tell your story. And I'm like, I'm sorry, say what? Like, I am tired. Mom is tired. How are we going to do that? And she was like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. If you just believe that you can share your story with people, I will help get the resources your way. I will help you overcome those fears to do that. And that was a big deal for me because growing up in my culture, so I identify as Indo-Guyanese American. I'm first generation, born and raised in Queens, the youngest of a single parent household. And growing up, I wasn't really empowered to tell my story. I wasn't encouraged. And really what the word encourage means, to give courage to. And so no one was encouraging me to express myself, right, in a rap song or in any way. Instead, the message I got was put your head down, play small, don't ruffle anyone's feathers, and certainly don't be too opinionated because you don't want to offend someone. And so these mindsets and behaviors perpetuated my overachieving, people-pleasing, box-checking self, right? Perfectionist too, add that in there. And so I was so caught up in that, which is what then perpetuated all of those fears. And so when Durga says, hey, write your story and share our journey of activating courage together and help folks activate theirs, I was like, okay, you know what? I can do this. I can get over some of those generational patterns. And that's something else that I kind of just want to quickly touch on because, often we're like, yeah, we're trying to be courageous. I'm trying to do me. I'm trying to do my self-care. But even that is hard because so many folks, we come, like for myself, for example, I come from legacies of sacrifice. I'm 3 generations removed from indentured servitude, which was the substitute system for chattel slavery in the 1800s. And so my ancestors were scared out of their mind. They were in survival mode. And so some of that stuff, even though we live in 2024, where we're all supposed to be woken and empowered, it's hard. It's hard because it's in my DNA. And so I just want to share that because there might be folks in this Zoom room where you might also come from legacies of sacrifice or from generations of folks who were not really able to stand in their full courage, power, and strength. And so I was able to share my story. I was able to put myself out there, yes, even in rap songs. And so it was by telling my story where I got to experience a deeper level of healing. I've been doing all kinds of healing as an energy healer, as a life coach, but to be able to get the story out of my soul is what offered even more transformation. And I share that because you all have stories to tell. And so what I want to leave folks with is, calling in your courage to tell your story, to share your truth, to let somebody know, I'm not even okay today, because that's okay too. And just by doing that and really connecting with your courage in that way, you are then encouraging or giving courage to someone else to show up courageously too. So with that said, I will go ahead and turn it over to the Ascend team. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Shenita. I was vibing when you were rapping, I have to say. I have to turn the camera on. I feel you. You're like my spirit animal. It is, everyone, just give a round of applause. I know that we're virtual, but please give Shenita a round of applause. It takes great effort and courage to put yourself out there. Me personally have TikTok's account, which I just started about a year ago. I keep the very first post there, and I constantly scroll back down to the very bottom and remind myself how far I have gone. And it is by putting yourself out that little by little, like Shenita said, you are discovering the relationship with yourself. And thank you again. And I'd like to introduce our next guest. I have great respect for this individual. Lisa Kahoshi is a highly accomplished professional with over 20 years of expertise in corporate strategy, risk management, retail banking, finance, operations, continuous improvement, business development, brand marketing, product, and payment. Currently, she is a senior director at Visa. Lisa manages relationships with largest merchants in the telco industry. She also serves on the board of directors of the Faster Payments Council, an industry-led member organization dedicated to advancing faster payment adoption in the United States. Her life passion includes travel, concerts, spending time with friends, family, and her dog. Lisa, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mosin. I'm just trying to clear the crying out. Shenita, that was super powerful. Thank you for sharing your courage and your story. And I think that just exemplifies the need for all of us to share our stories and to get us all comfortable with sharing our stories. I have to say I was experiencing fear right up until Shenita started going into her rap. Generally whenever I'm going to a speaking engagement, it's all that anxiety that Shenita was talking about, that need for perfection. But knowing that, thank you, Shenita, I do got it, right? That sharing my story is also healing for me. So to be able to hear myself talk about my story and the hope that it resonates with somebody else and helps maybe just one person, but even if it doesn't help anyone on this forum, it's going to help me work through everything that I want to focus on. So, Mosin, thank you for the intro. I also at Visa lead our talent advancement pillar for our VAST ERG, which is Visa Asians Standing Together. And Visa is a proud corporate sponsor of Ascend. And we've been partnering with them for just about the last year, really working on developing a lot of my strategic initiatives for talent advancement for our AAPI community, our Pan-Asian community, and really fits the theme of Ascend's leading together. So we're not going to move forward on our own. So asking for help and support is so incredibly important. I'm really grateful for the partnership that we have with Ascend, which is essentially my way of asking for help. So on the topic of asking for help, I do just want to underscore the importance of just the discussion we're having on mental health and just my personal journey with it. There are two themes that have affected me personally throughout my mental health journey. One, thinking that there's nothing wrong with me, I don't need therapy. And about 20 years ago, a couple of my friends were just starting therapy, and I was trying to think well, do I need it? I don't think there's anything wrong, or I don't even know what I would talk about. And this was before I lost my mom. So there wasn't anything major that I felt that was going on in my life where I would need to talk to somebody about it. But my friend told me something profound that still sticks with me today. Just like you go for your annual physicals or annual checkups, you need a mental health checkup every year as well. So thinking about it more as preventative, so that you're not going down a road where you're going to swirl eventually. For anyone that's a huge K-drama fan like I am, there's a drama that I'm watching right now called Dr. Slump, and that is a big part of that. And I heard this in Monsin's story, and I heard Shenita referring to this of kind of just this go throughout your career, that aspiration for success, and not realizing that you're not taking time for yourself, and then hitting a wall and then just spiraling down and then realizing I need help. And so I think that's really beautifully reflected in that drama. So I highly recommend it. It's really good. But so now I think of it as, even if I don't think that there's anything going on, we still need self-care as ongoing ongoing healthcare. The second theme, and I heard Shenita talk about this, working through the stigma. So, once I did start going to therapy, being able to get the courage to tell my dad and be able to accept why would you spend money on that? And, just get over it, or, I didn't need therapy and I'm fine. Kind of working through and accepting like those kinds of comments and still being okay with it. But, willing to work through the stigma. And I know the report that Ascend published talks about stigma being such a huge area where it affects the API community. Much more so. And so working through therapy, I found that there were two main root causes of all the stress and anxiety in my life, and I've heard them today already talked about. But as a data person, once I found out what those root causes were, then I needed to come up with solutions, and that's where kind of this continued focus on my mental health is just so important. And then what that did for me, I think going through therapy then gave me the clarity of mind to understand what exactly it was that I wanted, not just in my career, but in my life. And, for those that know me, you know that I talk a lot about knowing your what and your why. And I think pre-therapy, my what was that I need to keep moving up. I need to keep moving around every couple of years, or else I'm a failure. And again, I've heard that theme already today. And, for me at the time, that was fine. That was okay. And that was a valid feeling. That was a valid what and why. But looking back at that now, it's not something that really resonates with me anymore. And so that's where, I need to really understand like where those pressures came from, being the daughter of an immigrant, wanting to make my mom proud because of the amazing life she gave me, coming from the Philippines. Being a woman of color in the tech world and needing to prove myself. So understanding that there was a reason and purpose for my actions and my choices in my life, but knowing that that there is an alternative. So I just want to thank all of you who joined today just for taking the time to explore what kind of help and support you might need. And thank you to Ascend for organizing this important discussion and continuing to do important research that really supports us all. And then to the panel for sharing your stories again. I think that's just so incredibly important. So I do want to transition to our next segment. So we're going to host a Q&A with two thought leaders who are committed to fostering a sense of community and belonging for all through grassroots efforts, including in-depth research-based initiatives. After our conversation with them, we will bring all of our speakers back together for a Q&A. So make sure you have your questions ready. There is a Q&A box at the very bottom, so make sure you get your questions in. So our first guest speaker is Manusa Kulkarni, Executive Director at AAPI Equity Alliance and a co-founder of Stop AAPI Hate and an Ascend partner. Alongside fellow Stop AAPI Hate co-founders Cynthia Che and Russell Jung, Manju has been recognized as an honoree for the prestigious Time 100 Most Influential People and Bloomberg 50 lists, and as a recipient of the 2021 Webby Social Movement of the Year Award. More recently, she was awarded a spot on the 2022 Forbes 50 over 50 list for her leadership in advancing the Stop AAPI hate movement. And recently, Manju delivered a TED Talk from hate to healing. The team will post that in the chat if you all would like to check that out. So welcome, Manju.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that very kind and generous introduction. It's just such an honor to be with you all and want to express my gratitude to Ascend for the invitation to join this amazing panel.
Great. So Manju, I have a few questions for you. So for starters, share with us the impetus behind the launch of Stop AAPI Hate and what has been the most enlightening discovery for you since inception?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Lisa. So we started Stop AAPI Hate, Russell, Cynthia, and myself in March of 2020. And as folks may remember, right, this is really the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was actually even before March when we began to see that influx of anti-Asian hate. And I'll just share with you all, some folks, may have heard me speak about this in other settings. There was a child here in Los Angeles who was physically assaulted and verbally abused on the schoolyard. Just in the very beginning of February, he was out at recess. Another child approached him and said, "Hey, you're a COVID carrier, go back to China." And so, of course, the child was horrified. He reflexively said, "I'm not Chinese." That's why he couldn't go back to China. And when he said that, he was punched in the head and face 20 times. And so we knew here in LA that that type of behavior, those attitudes really could not be tolerated. So we held a press conference with local leaders. And then we were hearing the same thing from our partners up in the Bay Area. And so we wanted to first understand what was happening. So without any media attention, we launched the website. And within just a few weeks, we got several hundred incident reports from all across the country. That number has just grown and grown to over 11,000 across all 50 states. And when you ask about what sort of was a discovery for us, it was actually that most of these are not hate crimes. They're hate incidents or hate acts. And so they're often things that probably many of you in our audience today have experienced. It could be verbal harassment when you're out grocery shopping. It happened to me and my husband when we were at the gas station. Sometimes it can be microaggressions in the workplace, people making comments about us, members of our community. And worst case scenario, it can be physical attacks, it can be vandalism, property damage, but also just everyday sort of institutional discrimination. And so that's why I think this session today is so important, because we're understanding exactly what it is and we're looking at the mental health impacts. The last thing I'd like to say is just that we found that communities really have come together. Communities like Ascend, really prioritizing mental health. And then just across the country, like after the Atlanta shooting here in Los Angeles's Koreatown, thousands of people came out, ammas, appas, ajumas, like people, older folks in wheelchairs and walkers, to say, you know what, we're American too, and that we deserve fair and equal treatment, and we won't accept this. And so it was so, I think, beautiful to see that this movement all across our country.
Startling stats and really hurtful to hear, Manju. But as you think about kind of that collective action that you're talking about, and that was a great way to kind of bring that back to what are we doing and how are we moving forward? How are you partnering with different organizations to really move the mission forward of Stop AAPI Hate? And can you kind of drill into some of those examples?
Yeah, I mean, I just have to say the collaboration with Ascend has been so amazing. Partnering with Rubina and her team, and so many others to really uplift this issue, both in today's session. I had the honor of being in a plenary panel at the convention in Austin, having the survey. And, I had a chance to work with the researchers, review the report. And I think the findings are so important. I'm actually part of a White House initiative group that's looking at the mental health impacts of anti-Asian hate. And we're doing that with researchers, therapists, psychologists across the country, providing data and also resources. So please look out for those resources. They'll be coming out really soon. and will likely be on our Stop AAPI Hate website. Lastly, I'll say here in LA, we have something called Project Hope, which is healing our people through empowerment and engagement. And we did a cohort of focus groups in 5 communities: Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Filipino, and Cambodian, which are among the highest reporting to Stop AAPI Hate, and found out really sort of interesting things about what the experiences were. And now we're holding support groups in those 5 communities, and also with Stop AAPI Hate reporters who've reported to our website to provide services so that people can begin to really heal from what they've experienced.
Manju, thank you for all of your work and the commitment to the community. That's amazing to hear. I would like to transition to a poll. So James, if you can kick that off. So instructions will come up here. Yep. So, James, do you want to kind of give the instructions there?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Lisa. So if everyone here can just please scan the QR code or type in menti.com and type in the code. It'll pop up to the poll, and I'll give everyone a couple minutes or a few seconds to hop on there.
And as I understand it, we just have 2 questions. Is that right, James?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah,
And-
so I think the first question that we have, if you all have gotten to it, thank you for that. So true or false, overall, API's reported mental health is worse than Americans' mental health as a whole. And just for reference, this is based on Ascend's latest report, API Mental Health at Work. The link was included in the chat, so would encourage all of you to check that out. And we're covering a couple of the key summary points from that report. So Manju, what do you think? It looks like majority here, true. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's, in fact, not a surprise at all that our community's mental health has been impacted in a very negative way. And this actually also follows other reports. We at Stop AAPI Hate found even as early as 2021 that 1 in 5 in our community of folks who had experienced racism had experienced even racial trauma. So it's so important that we're examining this, and I think beginning as we are today to take steps to address it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, second question. If we could flip to poll number 2. So true or false, API women reported worse mental health than men. I think we've got much more on the true side. It looks like the results have come in. Manju, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, same. I mean, it's not surprising that women are reporting worse mental health. And I'll say that there are a few key pieces here. One is, and it's reflected in the report from the survey, there are a number of challenges. I know that often women experience the challenges of work-life balance sort of more intently than men do. We know that there's a sort of second shift for women because they're having to take care of children, the home, manage that, do emotional labor for the family, sometimes that men are not being asked or required to do in the same ways. And then I think also women feel or have the opportunity to be more open about their mental health in a way that maybe men haven't been. Even movies like Barbie have talked about the patriarchy and ways in which men and their emotions have been really sort of curtailed or marginalized. So part of, I think, our efforts are to get people talking about it, making sure that they feel encouraged to to share and to get the help that they need.
Thanks so much, Manju. Appreciate your insight on this. I do want to go to our second speaker. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Cy Stokes, who is the Vice President of Research at Coqual, where he directs the research team in identifying solutions for advancing equity in the workplace. Prior to Coqual, Dr. Stokes was a postdoctoral research fellow for the National Center for Institutional Diversity and lecturer for the School of Education at the University of Michigan. His award-winning research focused on campus racial climate, critical race theory, and student activism. His work has been featured in the Chronicle of Higher Education, USA Today, Huffington Post, BET, and MSNBC, among numerous other outlets. Dr. Stokes, welcome, and thank you for being part of the forum today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to start out with your work at Coqual around specific to finding solutions for advancing equity in the workplace. Tell us what inspires you to do this work.
Yeah, I think, well, first I wanted to start off with the personal and professional. So the motivation to engage in this important work, I think for all of us is always personal and professional. But at Coqual, we pursue equity work on a global scale. But for the purposes of today, I wanted to actually focus on our work on AAPI professionals in the US in particular. And Manju is actually one of our advisors for that study. And so the fact that we're always, part of these speaking engagements together is always great to see her, because the work that they're doing is absolutely paramount to the work that we're doing here. But first, from a personal perspective, I'm Black and Chinese, Black on my father's side and Chinese on my mother's side. And a lot of the exposure and knowledge that I have, acquired over the years as it pertains to inequity has been centered on anti-Blackness in this country. And when we think of experiences with violence, generational trauma, and the social, economic, and political oppression, we need not look further than even one generation away from where my father was coming of age in the 50s and 60s. And I always remind folks in these conversations, my father was born in 1948, coming into his consciousness during the Civil Rights Movement and knowing, a world both before and after that. And so even as I speak to all of you today, I remember what a privilege it is to even talk about equity in spaces where we were once never even allowed to occupy. And so where conversations about, diversity, inclusion, solidarity, and mental health were just completely unheard of. And so just as important as it is to understand the history of oppression and Black folks and what they've had to endure in this country, the stories my father shared with me growing up exposed me to this other side. The side of resistance, perseverance, and just life making within our communities. But throughout my childhood, from the little that I learned, within my actual classrooms about Black history, I learned even less about my Chinese history. I learned more from stories told by my mother, who immigrated to the US at 11 years old, whose parents fled wars and crossed seas for a better life. But once they arrived in the US, and more specifically in San Francisco and Oakland, Chinatown, they were told to assimilate and to suppress their identities, to erase their history. And a lot of that, and a lot of folks, like myself, who are second and third generation, are now reclaiming that history. We are now understanding that we have not only experienced violence and oppression at the hands of white supremacy, but have also engaged in resistance and activism within our own communities for the past, several decades and beyond. But with this surge in anti-Asian violence throughout the last few years, this has also been a moment of awakening within our communities. And I know there's been a lot of conversations about this, that there is this reminder that no matter what level of success we may achieve in this country, we are often still seen as strangers in our own homes. And, regardless of what the multi-minority may present, right, this myth of the multi-minority may present, we have to remember that that is often how we are perceived and treated in this country. And this actually inspired Coqual's recent report, where we called it Strangers at Home, the Asian and Asian American Professional Experience. I wanted to shout out one of my colleagues, Angela Xian, who came up with that title, because the focus of that study was within the workplace context. And so from a professional perspective, we kept hearing from corporate leaders, yes, we are heartbroken about this violence, But why is it, why is that our responsibility? Why should we be held accountable to any extent? And the answer to that is actually twofold. The first reason is that really the only one that should matter, and that is that we found 63% of AAPI professionals said that anti-Asian violence negatively impacted their mental health, and 45% said the same for their physical health. But we also found that 62% said that it negatively impacted their feelings of safety commuting to and from work, which is important to consider right now as companies are requiring employees to go back in person. But as we know, unfortunately, this isn't enough of a justification for some company leaders to engage, or I guess I should say, consider investing in targeted resources for this community. And so that's where we have to remind them there's also this business case, right? And we also found that 50% of AAPI professionals said that anti-Asian violence negatively impacted their ability to focus at work. 47% said it negatively impacted their ability to be productive at work, and 40% said it impacted their relationships with their managers, and 43% with their coworkers. And so if companies are wondering why they should care and need justification outside of the human elements of it all, we can see here that it also affects the bottom line. And I think the important aspect of the relationships to coworkers and managers is that, yes, even though this is happening outside of the workplace, if you are not saying anything to your employees who are clearly going through something on a national scale, international scale as well, then what does that actually say about how much you feel about them and their work? Are they just there to work for this company and that's it and go home? Or do you actually care about them as human beings? And I think that is something that I have to bring into my own work with my own team, and every single day where if something happens, what does it mean to actually give them the day off to make sure that they can even join a protest or just heal, from something that is clearly a collective trauma? These are all these questions that we have to answer, but I think companies needed some more direction, and so that's what we provide in our own work.
That's great. Dr. Stokes, the paper you referred to, Strangers at Home, we actually widely circulated that within our ERG. So I was going to bring it up if you didn't, but that it really brought to light the need for not only psychological safety, but physical safety. So again, if we could put the link to that paper in, a lot of good information in there. Highly recommend everybody take a look at that. So, one of the themes of this program is to, we heard a lot about storytelling and the importance of that and how we draw strengths from our shared experiences to just lift each other up and really just foster a sense of culture and belonging, not just in the workplace, but outside of the workplace. Can you share some of your insights on that?
Absolutely. I think actually one of the most compelling findings from that report was when we asked survey respondents about whether they thought it was important to them that their companies address violence against the AAPI community. And we actually asked this question. Our sample included Asian, Black, White, and Latino respondents, so not just Asian respondents. And what we found was that 49% of Asian respondents, so nearly half, said it was very important to them. But 56% of Black respondents said it was very important for their companies to address anti-Asian violence. And so we interpreted this as, really a valuable opportunity to build solidarity, because Black employees and, of course, employees from any marginalized background not only know what it means to be the targets of hate, throughout history and also in the present, but they also know what it means when their companies utilize their platforms to actually speak out about it. We have heard so many examples of Black, Latino, Asian ERGs or employee resource groups really collaborating on events together, holding difficult conversations with each other, and really just supporting each other through a shared goal of, collective justice. And I think that was one of those powerful findings, even though it was, probably not the one that folks will see in the headlines of the impact of anti-Asian violence on mental health and physical health and even just the career advancement of AAPI folks, right? Because honestly, when it comes to the companies, that's what the first thing they turn to, right? They don't think of solidarity first. But when we saw these findings, we thought, wait a minute, they may even feel alone in these spaces and maybe even feel like maybe their experiences aren't valued in these spaces. But actually, the folks who are sitting right next to them think it's just as important. And if those conversations with each other aren't happening, that is a lost opportunity for solidarity. So that's something that we definitely push in our own work, and we hope that companies can take heed. So.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Stokes. You and Coke do such powerful work, so appreciate your commitment to the community. I do want to bring all of the panelists back and transition over to an audience Q&A section. So again, for those that have any questions, please put that into the Q&A button at the very bottom, and we'll start with the first question here. Okay. First, how can we best support our fellow South Asian Muslim colleagues as it relates to the current genocide in Palestine and the resulting rise in hate crimes and racism against their South Asian Muslim communities?
Yeah. Is it okay, Lisa? I can get us started.
Please.
Thank you so much for that question. And, unfortunately, we are seeing, once again, the rise of Islamophobia. We're even seeing, individuals who are losing job offers. They're being doxxed. We've, in fact, gotten some incident reports from individuals, sadly, students who've use their free speech rights to express themselves and unfortunately paid a really heavy price for that. So I think in terms of solidarity, what we can do is be very clear in terms of practices that while these can be sensitive topics, that people should feel a right in the public square to express themselves. We want to make sure that there are practices and protocols in place so that people can do that in a meaningful way that's considerate of other folks' feelings, but that there should not be discrimination that happens as a result of this. And so I think in the workplace, that is really important. And also, aside from that, making sure, for us at Stop AAPI Hate, that there's not institutional discrimination from governments. We've seen too often with the China initiative and the backlash of 9/11 that our communities did experience profound surveillance and profiling. So it's important for all of us right now to speak out about this. If it's appropriate, share our own views, because I know many of us, do have strong opinions about justice across the world and not just here in America. So I would say those are a few of the key pieces to us.
Thanks, Manju. I'm gonna stick with you for the next question, and thank you to Yaya for submitting your questions. Manju, do you think API men are more likely to repress any mental health issues because of stigma surrounding what a man should be like, and the stigma around mental health in the API community as a whole? Could that be why it's less reported than women?
Thank you for that question. I want to be very clear. I'm not myself a mental health professional or a researcher, but I do think that, there is evidence. I think if you look at multiple reports, either by Stop AAPI Hate, by other researchers, that unfortunately that stigma does play a role in people being aware of their own mental health needs. And certainly these are genderized as well. One thing I want to point out, though, too, that people don't often think about is the way that the model minority framing has actually caused us to silence ourselves. So part of it, people know a little bit about that. It was a term coined in 1966. Really, that created a wedge between us and our African-American sisters and brothers, because the researcher, in this case, a professor at Berkeley, Professor Peterson, said, oh, look at Asian Americans, they're doing so well socioeconomically. And, in a very problematic way, said that African Americans were a problem minority because they weren't doing well, not acknowledging at all Jim Crow, the impacts of slavery, et cetera, and even current day discrimination. But the second piece is also important, which is that he said that African Americans were a problem because they spoke out, because they complained about and demanded change, right? And this isn't during the heart of the civil rights movement. And so I think a lot of us took that as a message, perhaps our parents did, that we shouldn't speak out, that we should keep quiet about what we're experiencing. And so I think that's too, it's not just our internal stigma or attitudes, but externally, the majority community has said, don't speak out about discrimination. And people, unfortunately, have taken that to heart and not raising awareness and not being open about their own experiences.
Thank you. Dr. Stokes, I'm going to turn to you. The question is, could colonization in Asian countries be a factor in the anti-Blackness rhetoric among older and more traditional API communities? If so, how would you recommend navigating and having those conversations with our families and friends who make those anti-Black comments and tend to view white as the best of the best?
Absolutely. I think this is something that I've spoken about recently in terms of the motivations behind these conversations recently. I've obviously, being Black and Chinese, I'm always kind of tasked with a conversation of what is it like to build solidarity with Black and Asian communities, right? And of course, I always have the same answer where we have to look at the source of this question. Yes, the answer to the question is yes, it could absolutely be a factor. But do I think it's the source? Not necessarily, because if we look at the actual source of colonialism, Western imperialism, it's not based on Black supremacy. And if anything, it's white supremacy, as we know. And so when we actually turn the tides, in terms of the conversation, how we frame it, towards the source, we can obviously identify the fact that there's a divide and conquer strategy that's been working for decades and centuries, where we are reluctant to engage in anything related to solidarity because we are seen as each other. We are seeing each other as the enemy rather than the actual enemy, which is a system of white supremacy. So not necessarily white people, right? Because that is not the same thing. But the system of white supremacy itself is what we should turn our attention to. Because oftentimes when we look at the source of the hate that we are experiencing, even within our communities, when we think about economic, political, and social oppression, oftentimes the very source at the very high level is the fact that we've been put into communities, pinned against each other, and told that our neighbors are enemies. Whereas instead, that is the easiest solution, honestly. When you look at how the system works, it's almost inevitable because it's easier to hate my neighbor than hate a system that I can't identify. I can't punch my system in the face, right? Like I don't even know what it looks like. But if I have so much hate in my heart and I can look outside and see someone that I've been told to hate, I can do whatever I want. And so that kind of element of it, the proximity to a system itself is not available unless you have that knowledge. And so what we've always emphasized, before I even joined Cocoa, also within the academic space, is once you learn that knowledge, you get far closer to understanding how the system works, and you become far more, that proximity starts to build up, right? And so once you are able to identify it a lot more, you stop believing in all these lies that you've been told. And as I always say, you're spoon-fed anti-Blackness since the day you're born, and it's up to you whether or not you want to eat. And if it's the only thing that you're being fed, of course you're going to eat it, because that's the only thing the media tells you, the only thing your community is telling you. But the way that you could resist against that is the actual knowledge itself, the history that's not taught to you, that maybe you have to voluntarily go seek. And so that's the importance of right now, especially with certain states, even in the US, going against that history and trying to suppress it as much as possible, is because of this very reason. Because they know that if we do learn it, we're going to build those coalitions, we're going to be stronger together. And oftentimes we're going to be able to identify the source a lot more often and engage in efforts of resistance because of it. So thank you for the question, though. I mean, that is definitely one that is asked to me quite a bit. But yes, the source is always important to keep in mind.
And I feel that resonates with me so personally in having those conversations and needing to, one, get educated, because the power of education is going to help you in those conversations. I would also say, just from a personal standpoint, to Yaya, who asked the question, in terms of like having that conversation, for me, it's taking baby steps, and it's a challenging system to go against, but to be able to even just recognize and deep dive into somebody making comments to see if they actually know why they're making them. So just asking, like, why do you feel that way? Or what is it, to get them to hear themselves say it.
Yeah.
And then, to pair that up with education and to be able to correct some of the statements, or, being able to have more conversations with the Black community to be able to empathize and understand where they're coming from, so that we can start to like dispel a lot of these myths and like long held beliefs. And so for me, I think it was kind of a, oh my gosh, I don't know how to sit people down and have this long conversation, but it's in my everyday interactions. How can I start to change the language? How can I start to dig into why people actually feel the way that they feel? And then, hopefully have that light bulb turn on. So I think for me, it's been a bit of a journey, but it's starting somewhere, and that's what helped me.
Hey, sorry, can I add something very, very briefly? So,
Yeah.
the conversation we're having today, I think, is rare in terms of specifically talking about mental health. But oftentimes, we may not even have to frame the conversation, especially within our corporate spaces or workplace communities, whatever it may be, as mental health. We can use other things as a proxy for it. But if someone were to invite me to a conversation within certain communities in the corporate realm of, we're going to talk about mental health today, I might not even show up, right? Especially if it's folks that I don't even trust and I don't even know, right? Why should I share my own story? But if someone were to ask me, hey, we actually want to invite you to this event because we are going to talk about our experiences with racial trauma. We're going to talk about our families. We're going to talk about how we can collectively heal together based on this intergenerational trauma. I might be interested in that. And I'd be like, you know what? I actually do want to go to this. I want to hear other folks' stories about this, because it serves as a proxy for mental health itself, where, yes, folks may not want to talk about how it affects them, but they do want to talk about what they've been through, because that is always a source of pride for when we overcome adversity. So just that reframing of the conversation, I think, is really helpful, especially when we engage in these conversations. So sorry, I just had to hop in there.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah.
great. Thank you. Shenita, I do have a question for you. What are 2 takeaways for self-care that we could incorporate into our daily lives to activate that courage within us?
Yeah. I was just taking a moment to take in all of the powerful information and stats that was shared. So the first thing that you can always do is what we did in the very beginning, which was take a nice deep breath. So I do this thing called a 1-minute reset, where I will literally stop what I am doing and I will just breathe. And I know it sounds so simple and so elementary, but I don't know about you, but sometimes I get so caught up in just grinding out, doing what I'm doing, whether it's for my children or for work or whatnot. And I forget to breathe. And I remember I used to be a habitual breath holder, and that is not good for our nervous system. We are not robots. We are human beings, and no matter how much the tech escalates, like, we still have to come back to ourselves and taking that moment to breathe, and not just in the morning. This might have to be like every hour, right? Or at the end of that meeting where you had to be in that Zoom room with all of those personalities and all of those people bringing things up for you, right? It's so important that you breathe, because that will really help you bring you back to the present, so that you're not ruminating in the past and you're not worrying about the future, and you can kind of get your bearings so that you can move on to the next thing. The other question that I would put out there for folks in terms of self-care is a question that I learned when I was in my transformational coaching program, which is this: what do you need? What do I need? If you can ask yourself that question at least once a day or multiple times a day, that can be a game changer. And here's why. Our needs are the things that like connect to our aliveness. And often we neglect our needs because we're busy, because we have a lot to do. And folks will often think like, oh, I need a vacation. I've been working too much. And it's like, the vacation is actually a means to meet the need. It's the strategy, but it's not the need. What's the need there? The need might be, I need adventure. I need solace. I need respite. I need solitude, whatever that might be. And we all have different needs. And so it's so important to ask yourself that, even if it's at the end of every hour, because when you don't ask yourself what you need, you neglect yourself, right? And then it perpetuates into all the other things, right? Not tending to your mental health, not tending to your self-care. And sometimes when I'm doing this exercise and assessment with clients, they're like, I don't know, Shenita. So that's why it's important if you can't answer that question for yourself, take that question to a mental health professional. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a mentor or like a colleague or someone that you trust and feel safe with, because they can even sit down and help you with that question.
Thanks, Shenita. Okay, I'm going to take one more question from Mosin, and then Mosin, I'll pass it over to you to close us out. I can't believe the time has flown right by already. So Mosin, with the increased number of people switching careers in this day and age, what advice would you give to either an early professional or a mid-level professional? What should professionals take into account while switching careers?
Wow, what a great question. The question that I ask myself every single day. I think it goes back to the question that we ask ourselves, what are we pursuing? For the 20 years of my career, I have pursued a lot of materialistic things, but the true pursuit, in my opinion, is a sense of feeling. It's a feeling that you feel safe, you feel free to be who you are. The goal might be retirement, the goal might be the next promotion, the goal might be making more money, the goal might be to buy a nicer car. But what you are ultimately chasing after is the feelings that those things are giving you. So then I ask myself again, are those the only way that I can give myself this feeling? If I love myself, why do I let myself feel anything but love? So it all started really look inwards. And I second a lot of things Shenita said. It's the strength is from within. I started my social media, like it's not because I wanted to earn a living. You know, it'd be great if I can make a living out of it. But that's not my goal. Again, I'm not chasing money. I am here to use the platform to share my thoughts and share my struggles, my vulnerabilities, and those words that empowered me to move forward. I hope use that platform to meet like-minded people, and collectively we can all support each other and be unbothered together. And this event is an amazing proof to me that because I was doing those things on every platform, in person, online, and it brought me here. And it works for me, it will work for everyone.
Thanks, Mosin. All right, do you want to close us out?
Yes, and I think Shenita, you and me, we kind of opened the show today. I think we will have to wrap it up together again. So I will give the mic to you first, and I will wrap it up the entire event for everyone afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'll make this real quick because I know we don't have a lot of time left. You know, in the spirit of leading and healing, what are some tangible takeaways that we can have, that we can integrate into our everyday lives, personally and professionally, to support us with calling in our courage, heck, to support us to just be, right? Maybe we don't have to do anything, right? Can I give myself permission to just be today? And so there's something that a technique that I wanted to share with you, and it's called affirmations. And I bet many, if not all of you, have heard of affirmations. Affirmations essentially are statements that can help you reframe your fear-based thoughts. And I like them because words have power. And often when I'm unkind to myself and I'm skipping out on my self-care, often I end up succumbing to something that we call in the mental health space called limiting beliefs. What are limiting beliefs? Those limiting beliefs can show up as like, who do you think you are to do that? Or like, you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you didn't produce enough. Those are just a few of thousands of examples of limiting beliefs, and we all have them. A lot of it comes from the way we were raised, the cultural conditioning. There's so many things that influence that. And so I know that when I'm vibrating down here, I need something like affirmations to help me get back up here. And so the limiting beliefs run deep, and the affirmations can be one way to help transform the negative fear-based belief into a positive, courageous one. And so I thought it would be fun for us to maybe try out 3 today. And so I want to invite us, in the spirit of our collective power, if you were to just take a moment to take a nice deep breath and imagine, we can do like a quick visualization. You can feel free to close your eyes or keep them open, whatever feels cool for you. And imagine that we are in a circle. Like right now we're in this like really mega big room to fit all 100 plus of us, and that we're standing together, and you know, we're together. We can see each other's faces and we can just feel the vibration of each other. And so standing together, I want to invite you to go ahead, and I'm going to offer 3 affirmations that I'll repeat twice, and you can repeat them if you wish after me. Can you whisper them? Sure. Can you say them in your head? Sure. But what is so much more powerful is if you were to actually say them out loud. So I know folks are on mute. Be as loud as you wish, because I think there's something really powerful about using your voice and embodying an affirmation. And so I'll say it once, and then I'll invite you to say it again with a little, a little bit of oomph, a little gusto that you can inject into it. So without further ado, feel free to take a nice deep breath. You can either stand up if you want, or you can sit up straight in your chair, whatever feels good for you. And we're going to start with that first affirmation. So feel free to repeat after me if you wish. I am never alone. My courage is always here with me, encouraging me to flourish. Take a deep breath. And now we're going to throw a little special sauce in there. Feel free to repeat after me. I am never alone. My courage is always here with me, encouraging me to flourish. When you feel ready, take a nice deep breath. Feel it in your skin, feel it in your body, and then we're going to move on to the next affirmation. Feel free to repeat after me if you wish. I am a demonstration of courage. When I show up in this way, it helps others become courageous too. Feel free to take a nice deep breath. And go ahead, and we're going to say that one more time super powerfully in our courage. I am a demonstration of courage. When I show up in this way, it helps others become courageous too. Awesome. And now we're going to move on to the final affirmation. Again, feel free to repeat after me if you wish. My courage gives me clarity. When I call in courage, I can see that I'm truly unstoppable. Feel free to take a nice deep breath. And because it's the last one, feel free to really go in on this one. Okay, here we go. My courage gives me clarity. When I call in courage, I can see that I'm truly unstoppable. So feel free to breathe into that. You can sit with that. And so in the spirit of those affirmations, if that's something that you feel really lands powerfully with you, I hope that you'll continue to stay in touch with me. I definitely have more affirmations and courageous resources. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn or on my website. And I would just want to invite everyone, to continue doing what you have to do for you, to take care of yourself, to activate your courage, to keep it alive. And if you don't feel like doing anything, that's okay too, because even that is an act of self-care.
Thank you, Shenita. And thank you so much. And this gives me the courage to do my closing remark today. I'd like to close today's event with a very special message about authenticity. It's been 20 years since I started my career, but it wasn't until just about 2 years ago that I truly knew who I was. I felt like I've been living in other people's dreams, thriving to achieve other people's goals. I wanted nothing but to impress others, the people who I looked up to, the people who hold power over me. I never asked myself, what do I want? I never truly received any acknowledgement from anyone for what I have done. But what really shocked me is that realizing it had nothing to do with all those people. It only had something to do with me. It is me that rejected myself. And I was ashamed of me. And it hit me. I can't live my life if I don't even like myself. So I made a decision to love myself from now on. If love is unconditional, then let's start by loving our biggest, most embarrassing flaw we have. Let those so-called bad impulse to flow a little. Be a little annoying, be a little silly, be like a child. When I was growing up, I was receiving this very consistent feedback that I received from everyone. I received this from my parents, my friends' parents, my parents' friends, my teachers, later on my managers, my mentors, my friends, my peers, my distant relatives, everyone. Apparently, I talk too much. I'm too expressive. I needed to tone it down. And I have decided to just let this flaw take the center stage of my life and see where it takes me. 2 years ago, I would have never thought today I will be able to stand here and let my authenticity serve. So I thought maybe one day I will be talking for a living. It is amazing to realize that your biggest insecurity might just be your most valuable authenticity. But no one will be able to see it until you decided to present it to the world. And no one will be able to appreciate it until you do. I hope this gives you courage to be you. And the Ascend family and guests, thank you so much for your valuable time and attention. On behalf of Ascend, we do not take it lightly. Thank you.